Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be taking a close look at scorpions, those creatures that just send shivers down some people's spines.
Yeah, I know what you mean. They certainly have that effect.
Our listener wants to learn more about scorpions, especially those found right here in Nevada. So we've got some articles and notes they've provided to help us out, ready to dig in.
Absolutely. Let's get started. I think we can uncover some really cool stuff about scorpions.
Okay, so first things first. What makes a scorpion a scorpion? The sources describe them as having this lobster-like appearance. And that's pretty vivid, isn't it?
It is, and it's not too far off, especially when you look at their large pincers or pedipalps, which are actually modified mouth parts. They're super important for a couple things, like catching and holding prey, but also for defense.
Ah, so those pincers are multi-purpose tools, basically. I guess that makes sense, right? They need to be able to grab their food and protect themselves out in the wild.
Exactly. Those pincers are key to their survival.
And of course, no scorpion description would be complete without mentioning that tail, right? The one with the bulbous sac and prominent stinger at the end. Sounds a bit intimidating, doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely can be. It's not there just for looks either. That tail is actually a weapon, and a pretty effective one at that. It delivers venom, which helps them subdue their prey and, of course, protect themselves.
That makes sense. I guess when you're a scorpion, you got to have a good defense mechanism.
Absolutely.
Now, talking about scorpions in Nevada specifically,
Yeah.
one source mentions that there are, get this, around 23 different species of scorpions in the state. I mean, wow, I had no idea there were that many.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it? And what's even cooler is that you can often find several different scorpion species living pretty close to each other.
Oh, really? I wouldn't have guessed that. Why is that, do you think?
Well, it has a lot to do with the diversity of habitats here in Nevada. Each species has kind of carved out its own little niche, adapting to the specific environment and food sources that are available.
So like different scorpions for different parts of the state, kind of like different plants.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right place to thrive.
That makes sense. Now, I know everyone's probably wondering about this, so let's get to it. How dangerous are these scorpions?
Well, the thing is, all scorpions in Nevada do have venom, but it's important to remember that only one species, the bark scorpion, is considered seriously dangerous to humans.
Oh, okay, so just 1 out of 23. That's good to know. What about the others?
With the other species, yeah, you can get stung, especially if you provoke them, but it's usually a pretty mild reaction.
So like a bee sting, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. More annoying than anything else, really. But with the bark scorpion, things can be a bit more serious.
Right, and speaking of the bark scorpion, our sources mention that they can be found in all sorts of places, even in homes.
That's right. Bark scorpions are pretty adaptable. They've figured out how to live in all sorts of environments, from rocky areas and trees, all the way to cities and towns.
Wow, they're like the ultimate survivors. So I guess that's why they're the ones people run into most often, right?
Pretty much, yeah. And it's important to remember that their venom is potent, and the reactions can vary from person to person depending on how much venom they get.
I bet that's scary.
Mm.
So what kind of symptoms are we talking about here?
Well, it can range from localized pain and numbness at the sting site to, in some cases, muscle spasms, and even in severe cases, breathing problems. It's really important to seek medical attention if you get stung by a bark scorpion, especially if you're dealing with any of those more serious symptoms or if it's a young child.
So the bottom line is, most scorpions aren't a huge problem, but that bark scorpion is definitely one to watch out for.
Exactly.
Now, let's move on to their behavior a bit. They're nocturnal hunters, right?
That's right. It's a strategy they've evolved to survive, especially in the desert. Hunting at night helps them avoid the scorching daytime heat and conserve water.
Smart. So they basically sleep all day and then come out to hunt when it's cool.
Pretty much. And it also lets them ambush their prey, things like insects, spiders, other small creatures. They're very patient. They can just sit and wait for a potential meal to wander by.
It's amazing how they can sense those tiny vibrations from their prey. And here's the crazy part. They don't even rely on sight to hunt.
That's right. They've evolved to use other senses instead, like feeling those vibrations through the ground and picking up on chemical cues. It's incredible how they've adapted to their environment.
That is pretty wild. It really shows you how much we can learn from nature, even from creatures we might not always think about.
It certainly does. They've got a lot to teach us if we're willing to listen. It's really amazing, yeah, how these creatures we might think are so simple have developed such incredible ways of navigating and interacting with the world around them.
I know, right? It's like we forget about how complex they are when we only focus on, the sting and all that. But scorpions are more than just potential danger, aren't they?
Absolutely. They're actually really important for keeping the whole ecosystem balanced.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, they're predators, right? So they help regulate the populations of other creatures like insects and spiders. Without scorpions, those populations could get out of control, which would mess up the balance of their habitat.
So they're like the unsung heroes of the desert, keeping everything in check.
Exactly. They're a natural form of pest control, you could say.
That's pretty cool.
Mm.
And speaking of keeping things in check,
Mm-hmm.
one of our sources mentioned something about scorpions being attracted to moisture, especially when it's dry.
Oh, yeah, that's true. People have actually used that to their advantage when it comes to managing scorpions around their homes.
Really? How does that work?
Well, if you put out some damp materials like wet burlap sacks or even just newspapers, it can create a little scorpion haven. They're drawn to the moisture.
So it's like a trap.
It can be, yeah. It makes it easier to collect and remove them if they're becoming a nuisance.
That's pretty smart. I would have never thought of that. Okay, now for something I found really interesting. Scorpion reproduction. I was surprised to learn that they don't lay eggs.
Yeah, that's a unique thing about them. Instead of laying eggs, female scorpions give birth to live young called scorplings.
Scorplings, huh? That's a cool name. So no eggs at all.
Nope, no eggs. And here's something even more amazing. The mother actually carries those scorplings on her back until they molt for the first time.
Wait, really?
Hmm.
On her back? That's incredible.
I know, right? It's a pretty awesome display of maternal care in the scorpion world.
So how long do they stay on her back?
Well, those little scorplings are pretty vulnerable after they're born, so the mother protects them and carries them around until they're strong enough to go off on their own.
I bet that's a sight to see. A whole bunch of tiny scorpions hitching a ride on their mom.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. It's a great adaptation for ensuring the survival of the next generation.
It makes you wonder how they all fit up there. So talking about survival, how long do scorpions actually live?
Well, in the wild, they can live anywhere from 2 to 5 years.
Wow, that's longer than I would have thought, especially considering how harsh the desert can be.
Yeah, they're pretty tough. They've evolved to deal with extreme temperatures, drought, and even times when food is scarce.
It's no wonder they've been around for so long, over 400 million years, right?
Exactly. They're basically living fossils. We've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about their anatomy, the different types in Nevada, the sting, their reproduction, their role in the ecosystem, even how to manage them around our homes.
I know, it's been a really fascinating dive into the scorpion world. And it seems like the more we learn, the more we realize there's so much more to discover, right?
Absolutely. There are still a lot of mysteries surrounding scorpions, even with all we've learned. Like, scientists are still trying to fully understand their venom and all its potential uses.
I know. It's pretty amazing to think about. Scorpions, they might seem scary at first, but when you really dig into it, they're incredible creatures. They've got a role to play in the world, just like everything else.
Absolutely. It's all about perspective, right? Instead of just fearing them, we can try to understand them and appreciate their role in the ecosystem.
I like that, shifting our perspective from fear to understanding. And you know what else is super interesting? That whole thing about scorpions glowing under UV light.
Oh, yeah, the fluorescence. That's been a mystery for scientists for years. They still haven't figured out exactly why scorpions do that.
One of the sources mentioned a few theories like maybe it helps them attract mates or protect themselves from radiation or even helps them hunt. But nobody's really sure.
It's almost like they have this secret world that we can only see with a blacklight. Who knows what we'll discover as we learn more about it.
I know, right? Nature's full of surprises. So as we wrap up this scorpion deep dive, is there anything that really stood out to you? Something that you'll take away from all this?
For me, it's realizing that we often view scorpions through a lens of fear, but when we look closer, we see that they're complex and fascinating creatures with an important place in the natural world.
Yeah, I agree. We've gone from seeing them as just, scary stinging things to appreciating them as these amazing adaptable creatures.
Exactly. And that shift in how we see them from fear to appreciation, I think that's crucial for us to have a healthy relationship with the environment. It helps us see that even creatures that might make us uncomfortable have a purpose, a reason for being here. There's beauty in that, even if it's a little bit scary sometimes.
That's a really good point. So what's the one thing you'd want our listener to remember about scorpions?
I'd say don't just think of them as a threat. Remember that they're a vital part of their ecosystem. They have incredible adaptations, and they have a fascinating story to tell if you're willing to listen.
I like that. So next time you see a scorpion, take a moment to appreciate it. Observe it. learn from it. But maybe keep a safe distance, especially if it's a bark scorpion. Thanks for joining us on this scorpion adventure. It's been a fascinating journey.